Respiratory system.
The purpose of lungs. Every cell in your body must be supplied with oxygen for aerobic respiration. The carbon dioxide produced in aerobic respiration is toxic and must be removed from your body. As humans are large, complex and often very active creatures, there's a need for an efficient exchange of these gases with the external environment. This is why humans have very specialised gas exchange organs, the lungs.
The respiratory system is concerned with the movement of air in and out of the lungs, where the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between air and blood takes place. All cells need oxygen and eliminate carbon dioxide as a waste product. On your worksheet, I'd like you to use the words in the box below to label the main parts of the respiratory system. And this is what you should have come up with. So you've got the nasal passage here, the pharynx, which the other name for it is the throat, the larynx, and the other name is the voice box, the trachea, which is your windpipe. Then you have the bronchial tube, and you've got two of them that go, one goes into one lung and one goes into the other lung. The pleura, which you don't need to worry about at this level, which is the lining of the lung. You've then got the bronchiole and the alveoli, which is the area where diffusion takes place, and then you have the diaphragm. So let's go through each of these elements in a little bit more detail. So the nose. Air is drawn through the nose where the hairs and mucus help to filter it and the air is warmed. The pharynx. Air passes from the nose to the pharynx. Both food and air pass through this cavity. At the bottom of the pharynx, air is directed through the larynx. The larynx is also known as the voice box because it contains the vocal cords. A flap of elastic cartilage called the epiglottis stops food entering the larynx and going into the lungs. And here's a diagram here. So the pharynx is this area here, and then you can see where the voice box is located in relation to into the face. From there it goes down into the trachea. So this is known as the windpipe and is kept open and protected by C-shaped pieces of cartilage. The trachea divides at the bottom to form left and right bronchi. The right bronchi links to the right lung and vice versa on the left. Inside the lungs, the bronchi divides to form smaller branches which are called bronchioles. And the bronchioles divide and lead to alveoli air sacs which contain the alveoli. And this is where gas exchange takes place. Now you've already seen this diagram before, and this explains the process of diffusion. So, at the end of each bronchiole is a cluster of sac-like alveoli. These are the air sacs that give the lungs their very spongy texture. This very large surface area is ideal, as it's across this surface in the alveoli that gas exchange takes place. And as you can see, just to review, this is a pulmonary artery which is going back to the heart. It's blue because it contains mainly carbon dioxide, as you can see here with the CO2 sign. So the blue blood with the carbon dioxide meets the alveoli, and because the wall of the artery and the alveoli is so thin, the carbon dioxide is able to pass through the wall via diffusion into the lung. At the same time, this person is breathing in oxygen, okay, by the O2 sign, okay, and that oxygen is being transferred into the artery. So basically they're swapping places. So then you can breathe out the carbon dioxide, and the oxygen then goes back to the heart so that it can be used for activities. So the next activity that I'd like you to do is put the following words in the correct order to show the pathway of air in through the respiratory system. So the words are bronchioles, nose or mouth, gas exchange, alveoli, bronchi or trachea. So pause the video and complete this activity. And also, once you've done that, I want you to tick the correct answer in each of the following statements. So gas exchange takes place in the A, nasal cavity, B, alveoli, or C, heart. Number 2, how many alveoli are in the lungs? A, none, B, 26, and C, millions. And 3, the oxygen is carried around the body by red blood cells. However, the blood also picks up the carbon dioxide and takes it back to the A, diaphragm, B, lungs, and C, villi. Okay, let's look at the mechanics of breathing. Okay, so inspiration means to breathe in, and this occurs when the diaphragm contracts, which means it gets smaller, and then it moves downwards and expands the chest cavity. The intercostal muscles pull the ribs up and out, and the alveoli expand and air is taken into the lungs. And expiration means to breathe out, and this occurs when the diaphragm and intercostal muscles relax. As the chest becomes smaller, the lungs are compressed, and this forces the air out of the alveoli. And we're now going to see an animated example of this, just to make this a little bit clearer. Okay, so as you can see with this diagram, as the guy is breathing in, the alveoli gets bigger because it's absorbing the oxygen. Okay, the rib cage is getting bigger as well, and this is due to the fact that the external intercostals are pulling the rib cage up and out, and this is making the thoracic area bigger to allow the lungs to inflate and have as much oxygen in as possible. If we look at the diaphragm, which is this area here, as inspiration is taking place, as you're breathing in, the diaphragm actually contracts, and as it contracts it pulls downwards, and this has the effect of creating more of an area for the lungs to get bigger, so as much oxygen as possible can get into the lungs. Now in terms of breathing out, the opposite happens. So let's look at the diaphragm. The diaphragm is actually relaxing, and that's actually pushing upwards. If we can see this here, it's pushing upwards, which is squeezing the air out. Okay, so air's coming in, and then it's breathing out to allow the diaphragm to relax. The size of the alveoli, as you can see, because the area is getting smaller, they're actually getting smaller as well. And the intercostal muscles are now relaxing, and when they're relaxing, the ribs are actually getting smaller. The actual surface area of the thoracic spine is getting smaller. Okay, so inspiration means that the intercostals contract as well as the diaphragm, and the overall effect is that this surface area gets larger. And then expiration, when you breathe out, basically you're squeezing the air out of the lungs, so the diaphragm relaxes as well as the intercostals as well. So let's look at the sequence of events during breathing in more detail. So the diaphragm contracts when you inspire, when you breathe in. So the diaphragm contracts and tightens so that the floor of the thorax drops. The external intercostals contract, which move the rib cage and pleura upwards and outwards. And this in turn means that the volume of the thoracic cavity increases and the lungs are stretched. Now expiration, the diaphragm and intercostal muscles relax. The diaphragm bulges into the thorax and the rib cage drops. This decreases the intrathoracic volume. Here's the activity. Complete the sentence below to explain what happens when we breathe in and out. Okay, so hopefully you'll be able to pause the video and complete this activity. And again, using these words here, larynx, venules, tissue, capillaries, pulmonary diffusion, right atrium and left ventricle, you'll be able to complete the passage of air as it goes through the respiratory system. Okay, so here's the process of diffusion again. Okay, so here's the diagram. Hopefully it's making a little bit more sense now. So gas exchange happens by diffusion of gases across the very thin walls of the alveoli. In order to maximize the amount of diffusion taking place, the alveoli have a huge total surface area between 70 square meters and 90 square meters. That's about the size of a tennis court. The alveoli have a moist lining to help dissolve the gases and are surrounded by many tiny capillaries, so there is plenty of blood for the gases to pass into and out of. As a result of gas exchange, the proportion of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the inhaled or exhaled air changes, with the air we breathe in containing a higher percentage of oxygen and a lower percentage of carbon dioxide than the air we breathe out. The table shows the percentage change of oxygen and carbon dioxide between inhaled and exhaled here. So as you can see, oxygen, the percentage that we breathe in is 21%, and we breathe out 16%. So that shows that we use a certain amount of percentage of oxygen to fulfill bodily functions. Carbon dioxide, you only breathe in 0.04%, but you actually breathe out 4%. Okay, which again shows that the cardiorespiratory system is efficient in taking the carbon dioxide as a waste product and expelling it from our body. And nitrogen stays the same, levels of nitrogen stay the same. So, as a review, answer the following questions about gas exchange. So what is the process of gas exchange called? What is the gas that you breathe out? What is the part of the respiratory system where gas exchange takes place? Which gas has the greatest percentage of the air that we breathe in? And which artery contains deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs to become oxygenated? So several factors actually affect our lung volumes, some that can be controlled and some that can't. And these factors include, so larger volume tends to be males, taller people, non-smokers, professional athletes, and people living at high altitudes. And smaller volume tend to be female, smaller people, if you heavy smoker, non-athletes, and people that live at low altitudes.